I'm coming to you from the clerk office in the deep of a closet because the other room is being used. So it's not a great background, but we'll do the best we can here and just see how we're going to work our way through. So welcome to our second session. And can you maybe just mute your mics in case we're getting some feedback here? And what we're going to look at, we had talked about September, October already when we met in August, but I'm well aware of the feedback that I've been getting from a number of the groups already for grade 1, that there's been lots of things happening, so they're not maybe in as far in September as they wanted to be. So we are going to move to December, but because we're meeting again in November, we will have an opportunity to really dive deeper into December. I just want to keep consistent with our belief that we're going to do 2 months at a time. And what are we looking at in those 2 months? So to begin with, I'm going to start with our land acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation, we want to acknowledge that this gathering is taking place on traditional lands across the province of Alberta, home to many diverse Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We especially acknowledge the Cree, Dene, and Métis who have walked and marked these lands for generations. We acknowledge that this land is a traditional meeting ground, giving voice to its original peoples and the story of creation of this country in a way that history may have forgotten. So I'm working off of one screen today, so if you have any questions, just feel free to unmute yourself and just chime in, because I may miss it in the chat box if I don't get it right off the bat. Okay, so in our sort of year at a glance that we were working off of, and remember, there's no requirement to be absolutely working off of the same year at a glance. You could do it in any order. Just some of the pieces we addressed today, in the end, we should all be at the same place is really where we should be as far as assessment is concerned. But if we're using, and most of you are using sort of that year at a glance, we were working on our journey to 20 to 50 and maybe moving forward a little bit with some numbers. So I want to just have a look at where we're at, and you may not be there, and that's fine. That's not an issue at all. So at the end of each of our sessions, my hope is always that you come away with at least some new ideas or some different perspectives of the new curriculum, and perhaps some new tools that you can use, because our outcomes are going to be continuously revisited over and over and over again as we work our way towards our end goal for our outcomes. I'm not going to be able to report a student's success on any outcome in September or October, because there's no way that they're going to be done. So every outcome will always be in progress. And if you're going to be using any kind of scale on it, the best we can say is that they're not meeting it yet, because they're not even close to being done. So again, having that sense of efficacy that I have the resources and the skill sets to move them forward. But also today, what I'd like to do is look at the biggest request I'm getting in the province right now is how do we report this at this point in time? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we move our way through. Okay, so having said that, what I do want to spend a little bit of time on looking at, and I don't want to unpack this document again, but I do want to talk a little bit about the big, large document that has all of the grades in it, because it houses the most key pieces that we need for reporting. And so I want to revisit it from that lens right now, in the sense that how do I know what I'm reporting on and what are the big rocks? At the beginning of this new curriculum, lots of us were asking, is Alberta Ed going to give us the essential learning outcomes? Are we going to have big rocks identified and whatever? And the answer was no, you already have them. And that's actually very true. We do. We just need to make sure that we're all looking for them in the same place and identifying the same ones. So a reminder that the top line in any one of the curriculum documents you pick up, but we're looking at the math one right now, the top line, the organizing idea, always tells us what is the concept that is commonly running through every grade in that subject area. So in this case, in math, we have an organizing idea of number that reads, quantity is measured with numbers that enable counting, labeling, comparing, and operating. That starts from kindergarten and is running right through to grade 6. So it's housing, it's like the umbrella, it's opening up and it houses everything underneath for each of the grades in that organizing idea. So we as teachers need to make sure that when we read that one line, we are all finding the same big rocks. Because if we're finding different big rocks, then we're probably assessing it differently too. So finding it up there is our first piece that we want to look at. So if I'm looking at what are the big rocks, what are the concepts that are sitting in this particular value, I'm looking at quantity is the one that screams at us right off the bat. That's the concept that's sitting up there. And then I have counting, labeling, comparing, and operating. I could consider those as they're verbs right now, but if I count, I label, I compare, I operate, those would be the nouns that are very general. How I unpack that and how I'm supposed to unpack that for each of the grades is going to be very specific by our learner outcomes. So this is quantity. It's running through from kindergarten to grade 6. That's our big rock. So that's our starting point. How I unpack quantity will be also started to be narrowed down when I look at the guiding question. I see it come up again. I see quantity. I see communicated, in this case, communicate. But quantity shows up here again. So it's still filtering down into grade 1. And then as I get into my learner outcome, I see knowledge or students interpret and explain quantities to 100. We know that the learner outcome is stated, but it has several rows of understandings that should feed into that big rock, that quantity that sits at the top. And that's important. The other piece that I want to look at is this whole explanation piece. I want to be really, we won't revisit this again. I just want to do it this time. When we're looking at these documents, we want to really be sure that we are interpreting all of the terminology the same way. So I've selected some things from grade 1, all of which we're actually doing right now. So N2 says addition can be applied in various contexts, including combining parts to find the whole, increasing an existing quantity. I want to just reiterate that when the word including is put into any of our writing in our curriculum documents, whatever follows that word including is a must do. And the reason this is coming up again is because there's still some interpretation that that big brown document that covers all of the grades is open to interpretation. It's just there as a suggestive piece of information. And that is not true. There are pieces in there that are must-dos, and then there are pieces that are suggestions. And we're going to talk about those in a second. So anything that follows including is a must-do. It is not the only thing that you have to do, though. So if you have other strategies, best practices, all those great things that you've been doing all along, you're still going to include those. I just have to make sure that I've addressed these 2 bullets for sure. When I look, I'm going to go down to such as next. 1.5, which we're working on, comparison of quantity can be described by using words such as. So I see these words equal, not equal, less than, and more. I probably, and so would you, I would guess, would probably do exactly those words. You might have some other ones that you add in as well. But by virtue of the fact that it says such as, if you have a list of words that you've always used, they basically get to the same endpoint, but those aren't the words you used, that's okay. Such as means you don't have to use it. You have to meet the integrity and get to the point of what the outcome is. But if these are not the words you're used to using and you typically don't, and you want to replace them, you are more than open to do that. So such as gives us some liberties. In most cases, I can honestly say the bulleted words are, most teachers have said, well, those are the words I use. And I said, yeah, I agree. I said, basically the ones that are bulleted when it comes to words are typically the ones that we're using. We might add more in. Where I find such as becomes a little bit iffy is when it's such as follows and gives you an example. And sometimes those examples are really tailored to a big city, for example, but I teach in a small town. And the example that's given really might not fit to what my kids could relate to. Well, then it's fine for you just to totally ignore what's written there and come up with your own example that fits to the child. So there's the flexibility that we have. There's where it's a little bit open to interpretation. The other one is words that are in brackets. So we do have one in 1.1 for measurement, so we're not doing that yet, but size can be interpreted in many ways according to measurable attributes such as how much a container holds or capacity. I'm to teach the word capacity to grade 1s. They need to know what the word means. But when I'm actually doing an activity with them and we're just busy doing all kinds of testing and whatever, I might not use capacity every time I want to talk about something. I might use more layback English terms, much easier language for a grade 1 student to understand. And that's fine too. So we have that flexibility that falls into place in those. The other pieces that we have are the progressions. And this time I'm going to address these at the end. I won't do them first. I'm going to do them afterwards. But the competencies, remember, never went away from the 2013 ministerial order. They're still in vogue, as are the literacy and numeracy progressions. Those never changed. So they're still up and running. But what I will do later is I'll go back to this link and we're just going to have a look at those are actually already linked to your outcomes. So you don't actually have to second guess yourself. What might I put there? They're already sort of identified for you. It's really a matter of you deciding, how am I going to unpack this? And how I see I'm going to teach this. This is the competency I want to use that's been suggested, or this is the literacy and numeracy piece that I'm going to put in. So you don't really have to create it on your own. They're already being done for you. So we'll come back to that. And that's only because I'm on the one screen right now. But what I really want to do is start to unpack that big overarching organizing idea that was sitting at the top. Let's make sure that we all find concepts the same way, because then we're going to get into the assessment right at the cusp level. Are we assessing the same things at the same time? So we need to find our curriculum through the lens of concepts, and we're going to do it through two different lenses, the concept of content and the concept of skill. Let's just work first. What is a concept? So I find a concept. The biggest concept will be found up in the organizing idea. It might have some very distinct wording that goes along with it, so that helps me to unpack what that word is going to be. What are some activities like objects, pictures, right? That's giving me the inkling that I'm going to have some things that involve that, and that they're basically shared across multiple grades. And a concept that has to sit in the organizing idea cannot just be related to kindergarten and grade 1. It must have a minimum of three different grades. In your cases, they're spanning K to 6, so they're big rocks. They are sitting there for a lot of different things. Okay. So let's talk about what is a concept. I'm going to go right outside of math. I'm just going to say table. Table is a concept. Okay, there's all different kinds of tables. I've shown you pictures up there. A table is a noun. If you're not sure how to find a concept, look for a noun. Look for a noun that sits as a driver in a statement. But you're not looking for something that is specific to just kindergarten or grade 1 or grade 2. Table is a concept that I can go anywhere in the world, and I may not speak their language, but they'll have a word for table. And when I say the word, everybody knows what a table is. It's universal. It's not specific to North America or Alberta or anything like that. We had tables 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, in whatever form they were. We'll have them in 100 years from now. So they're timeless. A concept is not locked in time. So when we talk about a table, pretty much all of us have a picture of something that relates to a table, whether it's a nesting table, a card table, a table that holds some ornaments, whatever. Okay, we have different ways of looking at it. So in general, when you're looking for the concept, it's timeless, it's universal, and it's generally one or two words. It's never a phrase, it's never a sentence. So when I looked at quantity up in our organizing idea, that's timeless. It's open, it's pretty vague, it is a noun. Quantity is a noun, but what quantity exactly will be unpacked as I get closer to my learner outcome in my grade. So this is important that we find those. So if I go back to my example, when I talk about a table in the most general terms, I'm talking about you walking into the Brick or to Leon's. When you open the door, you see all this furniture that's in there. There's couches, there's beds, there's appliances, there's tables, there's whatever. Okay, there's everything you can think of. But I didn't come for everything. So the broadest sense was furniture. I'm looking for a table. But even that is still, I could pretty much walk around Leon's and see end tables, kitchen tables, dining room tables, tables of ornaments, whatever, right? So what I need to know is, what am I actually looking for? I'm looking for a dining room table. So now I can really walk to a dedicated area in the store and I'm going to focus on dining room tables and screen pretty much everything else because that's not what I want to buy. That's the same thing in our curriculum. That learner outcome, or sorry, the organizing idea that's at the top that had quantity in it is like our furniture. It's big and broad. I don't know how specific you want me to get until I start to unpack the guiding question and I look down here into my learner outcome for more specifics. The learner outcome is my dining room table. It's what's going to tell me what it is I'm actually looking for. So the lens with which you specifically, you as an individual, look at one of those concepts, each one of you, when I say quantity, already may think about what quantity means in your grade and how you've unpacked it and how you would unpack it. And that is very unique to each teacher. We all have the same learner outcome, but we don't necessarily unpack it the same way. And that's what makes us unique. And thank goodness for that for the kids, because if they had every teacher talk exactly the same way and say exactly the same thing, it'd be a pretty boring world for them and for us. I mean, if we had to go through that. So the lens that you wear will also determine how you unpack it. It will determine then which of those competencies you see being related to what you want to do. That's how we're going to pick and choose. If I ask you to look at this document here and just look at it through the 9 squares that you're looking at or seeing, and I say, look at it through quantity, look at it from the lens of quantity. Most of you probably will zero in on the numbers behind the equal sign, because when quantity comes up, that tends to be where people go. So I see that I'm going anywhere from a question mark to 15. And that could be what I'm looking at quantity. It's a range that I have. But if I ask you to change your lens now, take those glasses off and put on a new set of glasses that you're asked to look at it through the lens of representation. In other words, how are the children showing you how they're adding things together? I'm not really concerned anymore about what's on the other side of the equal sign. I'm looking more at what are the strategies that they're using to unpack the process of addition, the concept of addition. So again, it determines how I'm going to maybe unpack it, what I'm going to assess, how I'm going to assess it. So let's do one together, because I want to make sure that everybody's got a good handle on this, because then I'm going to give you a chance to also look at some of the terminology that goes with it. So here's our first learner outcome, right? It says students interpret and explain quantities to 100. We're working on this one right now. 1.1 means this is your first learner outcome. The 0.1 means it's your first row of understandings, right? It was that very first row of cusps. That's how we labeled it. So in here, if I said, let's find the concepts of content, I see a concept of students, that's a noun. I see quantity, that's a noun. So those are 2 that I've identified right now. What I want you to do right now, just on your own, you won't be sharing this with anybody, so just jot it down on a piece of paper that's close to you. Look through the knowledge, understanding, skills, and processes that are in this first row of cusps. What words would you write down are the content concepts in that row? So just give you a second to go through them and put them in. What are the content concepts that you would identify? So when I go ahead and I'm going to highlight them for you, you can just double check. If you didn't get quite through all of them, that's fine, because they do repeat. But I see numeral, I see symbol, I see group, I see number, I see quantity come up. And that's always a good hint too, that I started with quantity at the top, I should see things related to that and that word come up over and over. If I highlighted something at the top and thought it was a concept, but I never actually see it come up anywhere else, then I might have chosen something wrong. So that's always a good test for yourself. So these are the content concepts that we have to teach with this outcome of students interpreting explain quantities to 100. So a numeral is a symbol, group of numbers. I have an absence of quantity is by 0, right? So these are the pieces I'm unpacking. There's going to be another row underneath this. It still belongs to this learner outcome, but it will have different concepts of content in it. Many of them link together to this one, but other ones will be new. Now I want you to take those glasses off and put on another one that says, I'm looking for the concepts of skill. What are the concepts of skill that are sitting in this first row? So what words would be the concepts of skill? There won't be as many, and that'll typically be the case. But I see words like represent, identify, represented, express. So this is when we first started this whole unpacking, when we did this in early August, or those who joined us in June. One of the things I said is guard against turning this into a checklist, because this is really the way these are written. You could very easily go down the knowledge side and just say, yeah, check, check, did this. And then I'm going to go over here, yep, check, check. The intent was that these worked as a package together. So I should be reporting them as a package together as well. So I see quantity here in different forms. I see it over here that I should be able to represent the concept of quantity using the different forms of words, numerals, objects, and pictures. So as I said, one of the things that we're seeing right now is people are asking for, how do I report this? So before I go any further, I'm going to just show you that this sheet right here, let me just get this out of the way. This page that you're looking on right now, I went in and I had a look at everything for September to the end of November in our year at a glance, or the outcomes that we're working on. What are the skills and procedure words that have come up? Like, what am I seeing are showing up for students? And when I look at those words, I see that the bolded words, and all I did was just grab some of the sentences below them and how they appear. Okay, so I see them here. There'll be other words that have the word investigate at the front with an other explanation at the end. But I just want to just get our heads into what are the words that are in these 3 months leading into December. So I see investigate, model, relate, represent, count. These are not just for you, the teacher. These are actually also for the students. The student needs to know these words in the same way that I expect them to model and represent the items of quantity. So we have to teach them, what does investigate mean? What does it mean to model? And I always try to use an example of if you've ever taught another grade, or even in the grade that you are in at the end of the year, but let's just say you taught a grade 3 class or 4 class, and you ask them to write a response to a question that you asked them. You're hoping for 3 paragraphs, or maybe 2 paragraphs even, and you got 1 sentence, maybe 2. And you're shaking your head saying, it even says explain. So you're wondering, like, what is it? Like, why can't I get past just 1 sentence? This is not an explanation. Well, in some cases, there's a couple of reasons for that. I don't like writing, and I thought I did explain it to you, and that's all I really wanted to say. So we got to unpack that piece. But there's another side to that too, is sometimes we put the word explain into something, but we've actually never taught them, what does explain mean to do? Like, what are you as the teacher asking me to show you in an explanation? So when we're building paragraphs, we often unpack that. But if I haven't gone to that depth, then I don't really know actually, what you were looking for. I thought one sentence is an explanation. In my world, when my mom asks me something, I give her a one sentence answer, or sometimes just 2 word answer, whatever the case may be, but I think that's my explanation. So we need to unpack these words, and that means that we do need to teach them as we're going along. One caution though, you might want to teach these outside of the math first. In other words, you might want to, like, let's say I just took the word identify. What does it mean to identify? So if I take it outside of math, it could be as simple as, let's take out our lunch for today. Whatever you have, lunch kit, lunch bag, whatever. Let's take it out and put it on the table. Let's identify the different food groups that are in our lunch. That might be scary, I get it. But let's just use that as an example. Why do I want to use that instead of the math right away? Because everybody has to have something, whether they're going to munch on junk food, good, healthy food, whatever. We can have a conversation about healthy foods and whatever, food groups. But the fact is, this is something that's tangible. It's in front of me, and it has nothing to do with my ability to do math. I'm going to learn what it means to identify. I'm going to unpack in front of me. I'm going to identify. I'm going to look at all the different components in my lunch kit, and I'm going to try and name them, attach labels to them. So we're teaching them what identify means. And then when I go back to the math part of it, now I'm not struggling to keep up with you to learn what does identify mean, and you want me to learn the math part of it at the same time. I'm not sure which one I'm going to hang my hat on right away, especially if I'm a student who struggles in math. So it's teaching them that. And if you think about it, when I unpacked the word concept, just to review it with you, I didn't unpack it with an outcome. I unpacked it with a table. Because why? Everybody knows what a table is. That was an easy starting point. So pick something that's in your classroom even, that all of them can relate to. And we teach them these words as we're starting to work through them, and we do modeling with them, and we do examples with them, so that when we actually want to report on it, the students have a sense of what this is. And then by after Christmas, I'm going to use these same words after Christmas as well. But by Christmas, I should have heard these words quite a few times already, so that at the end of the year, sort of Christmas on, you're having to do less and less revisiting, reviewing, retelling me again what it means, because I'm starting to remember it. In a perfect world, your students would have come out of kindergarten already having done this in kindergarten. So that's where the kindergarten teachers are actually starting as well. We did the same word list with them. So when we look at, oh, this should say grade 1. When I look at those pieces, when I look at those pieces, I can now take them, and I can, knowing that I have content concepts and skill concepts together, I can reword those, and I can use that as a reporting tool. And the reason I'm bringing this up is a couple of reasons. We have lots of school boards right now, they're struggling a little bit with the notion of how are we going to report? And again, that's something to have as a conversation at your school. Maybe you've already done that. If it's just the outcome that you're going to report, it's hard, because teachers are saying, well, they're never going to be at grade level until towards the end. So I'm always going to be saying, not there, not there, not there. And so we've talked about it with a number of boards saying, but does it have to be that way? If we're going to differentiate for the students anyway. And in this case, let's say I was working from 20 to 50. I've got a core group of kids that are still at 10. Like they're not even close to getting past 10 yet. So they're working on 10, but I've got John who's working up to 15 already. I've got Mary who's actually working up to 18. I've got a handful that might be at 20. Then I'm going to be reporting where they're at. And primary teachers do this anyway. In any of the report cards that we do, you tend to write beautiful summaries for parents. This is actually what you're doing. But now we're taking the actual wording and we're just tooling that up to use that as a reporting tool. And this is not a must do. This is a way to get around that, and also to record and keep a running record of how students are improving in their learning over time. So I might say through investigation, the student block can identify equal and unequal quantities to, okay, I got my core group to 10. That's where they're at. But I don't wait for them to get caught up to everybody else before I start doing skip counting or counting by ones or counting backwards. If I'm counting by ones and all I can go to 2 is 10, then that's what I'm doing. I'm going to be assessing you at counting to 10. And if you mastered that, I'm going to be bumping you up to 12 or to 14. If I'm skip counting and all I can do is 10, I'm going to go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I'm going to go counting backwards from 10. If I'm a student who's going up to 18, I'm going to go to 2s to 18. So you're covering all of your outcomes. You're assessing them all, but to the value that that student is able to do. And yes, our goal is obviously to get them all to the same level, but everybody starts at a different place and they go at a different place. So this gives us a little bit more flexibility when I look at the terminology for content and skill concepts. This gives me a way that I can address that by simply filling in, let's say, a blank, and whether you write that as a paragraph form. There are lots of these that you could put together. I just worked with kindergarten and grade 1 teachers on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. And so that's what they did. They took the samples I had here and they decided that they just wanted to rewrite them because they actually saw that this might be a way for them to do some reporting. Other schools have got a rubric already. Other schools have nothing. And we're actually toying with the idea of putting this into a rubric form as well. But again, you're only measuring them against what they know. So I can confidently say, instead of saying not at grade level yet, they're all going to be there because nobody's going to be at 100 right off the bat, not proficient. Then at least I can say is meeting the outcomes to 20. They're meeting all of the outcomes to 24 or wherever number you're at. So this gives us a little bit of a way to maneuver around some of those pieces that we were looking for. Okay, so that's one way that we can look at reporting. So when I look at our overview for September to November, I look at how is it that we are progressing them to 100, because although 100 isn't new to us in grade 1, the level to which we're going to be dealing with 100 is a little bit different for sure. So I'm looking at bridging baby steps. And remember that when we put these numbers in yellow, they are suggestive in nature only. So our goal for September was to really hammer on and work to 20 for mastery, although we're showing it in October as well, because this is a beginning month and we know there's lots of settling and routines and all those pieces. So maybe not even 20, maybe it was just 10. And I got to 10 for mastery. I got to 10 for different representations. I got to 10 for counting. I got to 10 for one-to-one correspondence. Like all of those pieces for 10 were done well. And I can report that they actually have done that fairly well and to mastery level. I'm moving them forward. Maybe not making a leap to 20, maybe it's only to 14 to 16, whatever. But you're using these yellow ones to do the bridging that needs to happen. So in the end, it is in the end that we are reporting students interpreting explained quantities to 100. That's our assessment for the end of the year. As we move through, we're simply doing individual pieces. The other piece that we said was, and again, 50, maybe for some of you, there's one group that I've been working with, they said 50 was too big a leap for them. So we actually changed it in that group for that particular school division. We said, why don't we buffer this and simply say 20 to 50? And you could do that here, but 20 to 50, which gives me a range that I do have some kids that are going to be at a lower end, obviously, but I have some at a higher end. I have this big span. If you're doing that anyway, then I don't think you need to change any writing on here or any terminology. But just remember, nothing was hard and written in stone there. This was just suggestions. The other piece was that we were using money to start these off. Money needed to be learned because I'm going to use that for counting. I'm going to use that for skip counting. I'm going to use that in my financial literacy. But I can't even do financial literacy until the kids even have an inkling of money. So that's the other piece that we needed to work on at the same time. And if I don't know the money, then we use the money as a counter. It's just a circle that you can say, if I'm working on 14, can you show me 14 of the coins, right? Or 14 of the circles, or better yet, 14 of the same thing. Can they even identify that coins look the same in different groups? So those were those activities that we talked about in the fall or in August, if you joined us then, about how do I unpack money with the kids to begin with. So you're unpacking it in two lenses again. One is a manipulative, just a tool. The second one is to learn the money as the concept, because I need to build that up. In the real world, had they come to you with already completing kindergarten in the new curriculum, they would already know the attributes of all of the coins and the bills. That means color, what's on them, all of those pieces. And then they would be also able to tell you the names of them. They don't necessarily need to know the values of them. Most of the kids will know that by the end of kindergarten. They just know it anyway. But do they internalize what 5 cents means? Probably not. Right. So we have flexibility there, and that's not even their requirement. They just need to be able to give us the attributes, all the different names of the coins. We would use them for measurement. We could use them for comparative language, like which coin is bigger, which one is smaller, which one is same colors, like all of those things. Like we can use our comparative language that we have in the math and just use them as a tool. So until I know the names of them, you could just say, find me 3. If that's where I'm at, find me 3. Find me 8. Find me 12 of the same thing. If I don't have 12 of the same thing, do you have something that is 12 of the same thing of something else? If not, can you combine them together? I was working with grade 1s yesterday and working with grade 2s today, 3 classes of grade 2s who have never seen money before. What did we do with them? Exactly what you would do in kindergarten. Exactly what I just described. We've dumped the money on the floor. They were asked to just clean it up, make it look so that we know what's there. And most of the children in grade 2 had no idea what those coins were. They knew that the bag was money because we had paper bills in there, but they didn't have a connection to what each of those pieces meant. And so we start from kindergarten level and work our way up. They'll learn it quickly. They will learn it much faster than the kindergarten student was, but we have to start there because that's where they're at. So also in September, we said that we would look at basic addition and subtraction. And some people said I would just maybe introduce what it means to add. I might not do subtract right away, and that's fine. And you'll see that we said introduce. There is no rush for this. But again, I don't have to wait for everybody to be at 20 or at 50 or at 30. If all I can count to is 10, I will do basic addition to 10. And if I can prove to you that I'm competent and consistently getting the right answer to 10, then you're going to start moving me up. If not, I'm going to start working on other strategies to make sure that I start to become proficient at that. And you're just working your way through. Patterning was the other one that we talked about in August, that some teachers do patterning right off the bat. Some teachers say, I don't do that till November. The majority of the grade 1 teachers that we worked with said we kind of do them right off the bat. We start right away. When I'm doing money, I don't need to know the names of the coins for me to lay out a toonie, a loonie, and a quarter and just say, is this a pattern? Do we know anything about patterns? Do you remember our patterns from last year? Could they replicate that pattern? So it doesn't even have to be attached to a number or a name. But do I want to get to names? Yes. As soon as they know the names, then we can say, can you lay out a toonie, a loonie, and a quarter? So now I'm testing that they know the names of the coins, they know which ones are grabbing, and they're building the core that I just called out. Can they replicate that core? So just having that conversation. You're also talking about cycles in grade 1. So that's part of our math curriculum, very much like your seasons of cycles, right? I can have that. What else cycles around? Time cycles around. So we talk about all those different pieces that can be related to that. But again, that's something I can draw in at a very teachable moment. I don't necessarily have to have a whole week attached to that. So all of these can be spiraling and happening at the same time. It's not like I have to create a dedicated patterns time, but I may have a dedicated intent to bring patterns in on a given day, given what you were planning to do. In December, we said, let's go up to 30 and then up to 50 when we get into January. So you are scaffolding. The goal was, could we get them to 100, even maybe not competent yet, definitely not consistent for the 100-day celebration in February. They may or may not get there, but that would be our goal, to at least have some of the outcomes that match 100 already started and well entrenched into that. I would use my calendar time for those pieces as well. So you're not changing. These are still the same outcomes that we're starting with from earlier. There's nothing that's really different there. We're just tooling up the number according to the bridging. So you're just bridging for mastery. You're still using money. Nothing has changed. You're just bumping it up. And as I learned that toonies are 2, I can use that for skip counting. I can use that to skip count to 20. I can use that to skip count to a larger number. Once I know how to go by 5s, I can use my nickels to get to 100. I can use my nickels on the number line and put them on a number line to show where does a nickel go on a number line, 5, 10, 15, 20. Have them place the nickels on there. Then they also see that there are 20 nickels in $1 or in 100 cents, right? So all of those pieces just keep happening over and over and over again. I just keep tooling it up based on the number that my student is working on. So nothing again changed in here as well. Your time is the one that you asked to have just go all year, much the same as this one, but ongoing for time, because time is the experience of change and again, cycles. We go through a day. What do we know about a day? There's a day and a night. There isn't a requirement in grade 1 for them to tell time. That's a grade 3. But we can talk about the cycles of day and night. We can talk about the seasons of the year, right? All of those can be put in there. The cycles of a calendar. We see there's months in the year. We see weeks, like all of those cycles can be brought in. So at this point, we want to just take inventory of where the students are at and which ones do you feel have competency already in that level of all the outcome pieces that we're assessing them on. So if all I can do to 10 is, can I consistently show you all those pieces that you wanted me to do to 10? Now you can bump me up. So we need to know that we're all working with the same terminology. Goal will be wherever you've started. And some people started right at 20. They wanted to go 1 to 20 right away. And that's fine if that works for you. But what does success look like and sound like when you know that the content concepts and the skill concepts have been achieved? What will that look like and how would you write that out for a parent? So you could use something like those sentences that are there. Okay. Now, I just want to bring this forward again, just as a quick reminder that this is our year at a glance. This is our first outcome. This is the second row because the point 2, this is the second row of cusps. These are the understandings that go with that second row, counting principle. Okay, the quantity can be determined by counting more than one object in a set at a time. So these are the understandings that belong to this row of the outcome. These are not the knowledge and skills. So the bullets in here in your year at a glance are the understandings. In order for me to really unpack that, I still need to go to this document. So here's your 1.1. Here's the same learning outcome, never changes. 20 to 50 might be our goal. And here's what was happening with that understanding, the knowledge and the skills and processes. So again, I might not be proficient at everything all the way up to 100, but maybe I am proficient at meeting the knowledge and the skills and processes put together for 10 or 14. And then I just move forward from there. So we would have to go back and make sure that we look at our curriculum document, the cusp, so that we're making sure that we are hitting these. And I'm going to be revisiting. I might be counting very well by 1s. I might be counting perfectly by 1s to 10, forward and backwards. I might not be ready yet to start by skip counting. Okay, that just might not be happening in the work that I'm doing. I might not be, but even if I can only count to 8, I can still skip count by 2. And it just takes me to 8, 2, 4, 6, 8. Just so that they keep working on the number that they're at. They don't get left behind for skip counting because they don't know all the numbers that everybody else does. Okay, so let's move on. In the patterning piece, because we're talking about cycles, I also included for you a little bit of information because it was mentioned in there, the seasons, day and night, life cycles. When we look at Indigenous, because that comes up as well as your relation to First Nations practices in cycles. So there are some pieces I will show you that I've included in the document here as well. But what I want to make sure that everybody's clear too is that there are certain numbers. So we're talking about numbers. Let's talk about numbers from First Nations perspective. The number 4s. So Elder Lynn Cote will take you through an explanation of the number 4. Why is it so important? And that's a good place to bring it up is in math. And it works well for cycles. So she'll talk about the seasons. She'll talk about the wellness. She's going to talk about the animals. Like there are so many pieces tied into the medicine wheel. So that video is probably more for you than it would be for the student. but I just wanted to include it so that you have another option there. And wherever I can, I will always try and put some First Nations pieces in so that you have them available. So remember, we also drew in the financial literacy into the math right off the bat. Like we've embedded it into the math for K-3 because I need it for the financial literacy. I need to learn it, but I'm also leveraging it to do all the tools that I need to do to teach the math, the skip counting, the adding, the subtracting, the debit, coins, bills, conversations, all of that is going to come in when we start talking the financial literacy side of it. So that's when I have a good knowledge of money already. So there is no rush for that. There is absolutely no reason we need to even think about bringing that up until maybe March, like into the spring. We can bring it in there. So these are the kindergarten. Here's the grade 1. So they would have come to you with this. I need to go back, just like I did with the grade 2s today. I need to go back. We did just the attributes. You know, what do you notice? And when I said clean it up, make it look, I didn't say sort them. I didn't tell them the names of the coins. I'm not going to stand up there and say this is a loonie. They need to be able to find those attributes in grade 1 and 2 on their own first. And we talk about them, but they need to look at them and find them. So I said, can you find anything that has an animal on it? I didn't say find a coin. I didn't say find a bill. I said, can you find something that has an animal? So that's how we unpack the nickel. There's a beaver. What do we know about beavers, right? We just tied it all into that. What else did you find? Well, I found a duck. No, I found a goose. No, I found a bird. Okay, all of you found a bird for sure. But this bird is a special duck. What kind of duck is it? Only one child knew that it was a loon. These are grade 2s. So we have to be patient and go back with them and start working our way through. Some of them said a nickel is 5 cents. I said, wow, that's an important word. I said, what does cents mean? I don't know if I've ever heard that word before. So they just said, it's 5 cents. I said, but do you know what a cent is? Can anybody show me or tell me what a cent would be? Where did they get it from? They read it on the coin. Good for them. That's very astute. They're looking on the coin for attributes. So they found the wording 5 cents. Do I know what cents is? No. The first class had no idea what cents were. They didn't even bring it up. The second class read it. The third class, 4 of the children said, cents are like how much you need to make a loonie. I said, what's a loonie? So again, I'm not telling them, I'm drawing it out of them because they need to be astute enough to look for things to start connecting it. And once we connect what a loonie is and what its features are, and it's gold and it's worth $1, I can start leveraging that, the math side of it. But just telling them, here's a loonie, it's a picture, it's a $1. If I don't even know what a dollar is, I'm fixed on the bird. I don't really care about the rest of it. So use it as a tool until they know the names. And once they know the names, we keep using it as a tool and start leveraging it for math. In kindergarten, I've highlighted for them, and I'm building these up. Every time I do a grade, you get all of them. So you're seeing the kindergarten ones. Anything that's in yellow, those are outcomes that I could completely do with money. I'm not suggesting that money would be the only thing we would use. But up front, since I need to learn the money, let's make sure money is really in their face for the first 2 or 3 months. We're still going to use base 10 blocks and counters and all those things. It's just we want them to become proficient with the money as a tool and as a concept. So I can do all of the things that are highlighted in yellow, maybe sometimes even a little bit more, using money. I can do the same in grade 1. I've got quite a few that I can absolutely working on learning money, but still meeting my learner outcomes and the things I have to teach. I just keep revisiting back and forth over and over and over again. When we get to fractions, we're talking about halves, the word, not the fraction 1/2, not telling them what a fraction is. We're just using the word halves, half a sandwich, half a glass of milk, half a watermelon. We're putting it in terms of a whole, just pictures of wholes and what would the half look like in that, cut a heart in half so that they're not attaching it to this form right off the bat, and not even in grade 2. In grade 2, it's not till the end of the year that we're really putting the word fraction into play. They're going to be using halves and quarters so that it's in a relation to the whole quantity, not with an emphasis of this. Okay. And I can use money for the halves too. So this is kind of, if you haven't had a chance to empty that bowl of money somehow, some way. Try it out, see what they know, see how they go around. Today, I simply went around with all of these children. I don't know them. And I was just keeping a record. They had name tags on their table. So when I would hear sort, I would walk over and say, did you say sort? And they'd say, yes. I said, can you tell me what that means? What do you mean you're sorting? So then some said, well, like I'm putting these all together. I said, good. I said, so how did that become sorting? Like, what does that mean? Well, these are just all together. So again, they have a notion of the action, but they can't explain it to me yet. They're not wrong what they were doing, but they can't explain it. Other students, when I went over, they said, I'm sorting. I said, can you tell me what that means? Like, why are these together? Well, because they're actually the same coin. So I put all the same coins together. That's how I sorted them. Good thinking. Okay, that's what we want to tease out of the kids without telling them. Don't say empty and sort, especially those who don't even know what sort is, then we haven't gained anything with that. So it's teasing it out first, leveraging it as a tool, making it a concept to learn with as I go along. There was a video that we had done earlier in the year, and you can have a look at that. It's in the folder. I'll go back to the folder at the end to make sure everybody can get into that and show you where they are. But there's all those past work that we did that you can go back and see as well. So when you dump it, it might look like this. And yes, there's pennies in it. And why are we doing pennies? Because pennies are still very much in your world. You've not lost them. You cannot go to the store. You cannot buy your coffee in the morning. You cannot do anything. You can't even fill up with gas and not have pennies, because everything is still calculated with pennies. The only difference is we are not walking around with a penny in our pocket because it was just too cumbersome. 100 pennies could easily be replaced with a loonie. So, oh my goodness, why would we have all these pennies? And it cost the government 1.6 cents to make a 1 cent loonie. They were losing millions of dollars. So yeah, absolutely, they dropped it. That's the only thing. So the question is then, why should I bring them up? Because we're still leveraging it to count to 100. We're still using them for place value. And it may not be just about grade 1. It may be about grade 2 and grade 3 in particular when we get into cents, right? I need to understand what I need 100 of those pennies to make a loonie. That's my place value of tenths and hundreds. So I'm just talking money. I'm not going to talk about place value with them. I'm going to talk about money, cents. And I'm going to work with them on that. And even though they just think it's money, what they're really doing is place value behind the decimal. We're just not telling them that because I don't need to assess that, but I can absolutely take that forward. So that's the reason that you still have pennies in it. And I'd encourage you to use it. So they'll do something like this. And today I had a whole group that did not know. The class just didn't know. So I said, can you find me 5 that have the bear on them? Because we had gone through the characters already. Or I said, can you find me 5 of anything that looks the same? And then we put our fingers on them. We counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We went backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? So they touched them just so that we had the coins, that they see them. For the one group who knew that this was a toonie, I said, does that mean, what does that mean? It means $2. I said, okay, then let's skip count by 2s. Let's put 5 of them out. Can you put your finger on the first one? Let's do it together. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, go backwards. 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. So we did that, learning the money, still skip counting, like just moving them forward little bits at a time. Did everybody know how to skip count by 2? No, some of them stopped at 4. You could hear it. Some of them stopped after 6. But again, we're just moving forward with the practice that you always do anyway. The word coin is very foreign to students. So you may have to spend some time teaching them that. In all of the classes that I've worked with in the last 2 days, every class had one student who knew what a coin was. Because I would hold up a $20 bill and I'd say, this is a $20 bill. What would we hold up? What would we call these? And I would hold up a toonie and they say toonie. I said, okay, but is there another name for it? Some would say it's round, right? So they didn't understand and clearly didn't know the word coin, but there was always one student who said, it's called a coin. And I said, how do you know coins from the $20 bill? Well, bills are paper and coins are not. That's kind of where you want to go. It doesn't have to be anything more deep than that. So again, you're just using them as counters. If they've never seen them before, just keep leveraging them, put them in front of them, use it for counting, use it for doing all the aspect that you need to cover. I can talk about shapes. In some of my money bags, I put wooden pieces of 2D shapes, squares, I put hexagons in there. I put colored blocks from the pattern blocks in there. And I do that because I want to see what are they doing with those. First of all, most of them say this isn't money. Great. That's what first thing I want to see. But I also want to see what they do with the hexagons and what do they do with those shapes? Do they put them together by color? Do they put them together by shape? So that's, again, just an attribute. I want to know how they sorted it. Some students, lots of students in every class I've had this, where they take the hexagons and they put them with the loonies, because the loonie isn't perfectly round. It has kind of straight sides on it, and they're picking up on that. And they're saying there's not as many, but they have straight sides. I'm putting these together. Some of them just say all the wooden things go together. So again, it's just listen to them and see what their thinking is as they're working through that. So the story of our coins, this is kindergarten, right? I need to know the name of the coin. I need to know what's on it. When I get into grade 1, I need to know the name of the coin. I need to know what's on it, the distinguishing feature, and I need to know what it's worth. These have been done for you. You don't actually have to create any slide decks for you. When you get the slide deck, when you click this link on, it's a teacher pay teacher, and I'm not a big fan of that, but this teacher has created all of that work for you. It goes well beyond what you need in grade 1. So there's the kindergarten portion of the identification. There's the part about grade 1 where I need to know the value of it. And it doesn't have to be big. It could just be cents, right? I can just talk to them about cents, use the word cent if you're not ready for the symbol yet, or not at all. Like just start with the name of the coin and work from that. And then it will get into things like greater than, less than. That's grade 2 already. So it's kind of one of those things that you could share out with kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2. We're saying, I can't give these to you because if I put them up on a slide deck and post the slide deck, then it's copyright violation. But it's only $3.50. It's well worth your while, or get together with another grade teacher. You also have this link right in here. And this one is this money app that's sitting down below. So most of you already downloaded that, have been working with me already. It's free. So when you click it on, just download it to your computer. And this allows you to bring Canadian money up and drag it out. So if you want to test them for knowledge, just say, can you show me 2 loonies, right? So now they have to pick the loonie and drag it up. Can you show me 5 nickels again? And then I can start using that for skip counting. I can start bringing them out and building on them. Instead of using a 10 frame with the typical counters, could we just use the counters to be nickels? Like, could we use that instead? Just to make that a part of the visual. Again, I don't know it, so just find me 6 of the same thing. Once you know it, you can say find 6 nickels and put them on our 10 frames. Find 11 nickels, so it'll be a 10 frame and another 10 frame with 1 in it. The subitizing cards, we've looked at these before, but these are absolutely valuable right up to grade 12. So running off a copy for each one of the students to have their own little pack would be another thing that would be used. Again, they're seeing them by fingers, they're seeing hashtags, they're seeing the dot frames, they're seeing the dot patterns, they're seeing the words, they're seeing the number, they're seeing the rec and rec. So all the different ways, and you could just have them play a game of war, just the mental math. Even if they're at 50, it doesn't matter. Turn it over, whoever calls the number, the highest number out gets the pair, right? As we get into higher grades, we actually turn them over, and whoever multiplies the 2 numbers in whatever form they come up and gets the right product first gets the pair. So you can just bump these up to addition. You can say subtraction. Now they have to tool them up, read them, turn them over. I see a 10, I see a 3. I have to subtract largest minus small. Okay, 7, right? So that there's a little bit of thinking that happens in here. This is what those pennies would look like in the money app. I just drag them out. I create all my PowerPoints with this. You can change the background to white if you want when you bring them out. But what am I seeing now? I'm seeing 5 pennies. What am I seeing? I'm seeing 5 counters. I'm also subitizing 5 in a row. I'm now counting. I can skip count by ones. Can I skip count by 2s? Yeah, I can go 2, 4. Oh, I have to stop because I don't have another number, right? So there's all the different ways that we can use money for all the different pieces. I can eventually say that a nickel is the same as 5 pennies. And grade 1 students are very able of handling those. I see 2 rows of 5 now, double 5s, right? We do that work. Double 5s is 10. I see this row of 5s is a nickel. I see that row of 5s is a nickel. I see skip counting 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So you can drag arrays out on that money app in groups of 1s, 2s, 5s, and 10s. You decide how you want it to come out. So now I could make more rows of 10s, right? I could make it look like this, where I see a multiple set of rows. A student might see it by fives. I skip count by fives, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. I could skip count the whole thing by twos. I'll have one left over. I could say, I see a row of 10, 10, and a 5. So again, it's whatever the student is seeing, but there's so many different ways that I can bring it up right now to learn the money, but leverage all my outcomes that I have to do in multiple ways at multiple times. The more they get into the habit of doing the skip counting, seeing the counting, grouping it, the better it is, and the more we just keep revisiting. So I might show here the student, you can't see at the bottom, but it's 2 dimes and a nickel. I ask them to be efficient. Efficient means, is there a 1 coin that could be used instead of 3 coins? In this case, it could be a quarter, but that means I have to know the money. Here's 10 pennies, or 100 pennies, sorry. So now I see rows of 10. I see multiple rows of 5. However you want to do it, I could skip count by twos, right? There's so many different ways to use this single one array that they can just practice on. Putting them on a number line. When we do the number and we bring money into all of the groups that we've been working with right now, we show them a number line right away, but we put cent signs behind them so that they're actually recognizing that this is also a way for me to tool up a dime, or here's how I get to a nickel, right? So we'll do those as time comes on, but that they understand that I can count by ones, which is the same thing I'm doing with my counters. And that I could create money this way. I could go up to 20, I could go up to 100, right? There's my 100 cents, my loonie, that's my goal. So I've also, as I mentioned, included some First Nations for you because we're doing symbols of circles, there's triangles, there's some basic shapes that are suggested. This is a great way for us to make the connections to First Nations as well. So I can talk about the circle of the drumming. I can talk about half of a circle. I can talk about the medicine wheel, that it has quarters in it, and I can talk about a quarter being 4 and a dollar when I get there and I figured it out. But right now I'm just talking about a symbol that I see of a cycle. I've included Cree syllabics, not because I expect them to learn syllabics, but I want them to see that there's triangles in syllabics. And for some of our First Nation students who are learning that, they'll be able to teach the kids a few things on it. So it's a nice way to make connections to First Nations that are directly related to our math. Patterning, right? I can use patterning. What am I seeing for patterning? What are the cycles that I'm seeing for the repetition? All of those pieces, but again, I can link it to my First Nations. Leah Dorian, if you're looking for a good author for Indigenous books, Leah Dorian writes excellent First Nations books, especially in math. You can Google her. She's got lots that's on the website as well. But she also has, all of her books are very vibrant in color and great for patterning. So you can just even grab some pictures that are posted on the internet and link those to some of your patterns. Mother Earth. Mother Earth is generally always represented with a circle somehow, either the earth being the circle or the circle of itself, Mother Earth, the tree. So again, we can have that conversation of what is Mother Earth, but then I'm linking it to my circle conversation, right? Why is the circle so important in Indigenous culture? So we can have that conversation. You can put the students in a circle. And so depending on what number they're working on, put them all in a circle and they all have to stand up and count off to that number, right? And once they've counted off, they and finish. If they're the last person, then they sit down, they're out of the circle. You could skip count by twos and they go around the circle and do the same thing. So it's just a way for them to see each other. They're in a circle, but they're doing the math at the same time. The patterns on a teepee. Not all Cree teepees will have patterns on them because it depends on who your elder is or your chief is. Some of them do not allow patterning. Typically Cree teepees are not patterned. Blackfoot are. There are Cree teepees that have patterns on them. It just depends on the area you're from. So again, I could use that to talk about circles. I could talk about it appears to be a triangle, right? And what is the symbol of the triangle as a teepee? We talk about cycles. We talk about our calendar. We have 12 months. They have 13 moons. So it's like 13 months is what we're talking about. But where does the 13 moons come from? Comes from the back of a turtle. Where does Turtle Island come from, right? It's that combination and linkages that we do. The 13 moons, if you look at any turtle has 13 different sections on its shell, whether it's one that's in the tropics, those big honking ones that walk around, tortoises, or whether it's that little green one that might be in your fish tank. They all have 13 on them. And so they are linked to beliefs about what each one of those represents. Every one of those might be a little bit different, though, depending on which culture and band you are talking to. So they all have a meaning for the 13 moons. The meaning of the moons may be a little bit different. So I've just given you one example. This page in your handout is an app that allows you, or a page that lets you go in, and all of these will be interactive. So you'll be able to go in and grab any of these. The planning documents, just as a revisit for those who are new to the group, those were done by Alberta Education for our existing, or the existing curriculum that we just came out of, the 2007 version. They are wonderful, and they're still very much going to work for everything that you do. But right now, because you're going to 100, I've grabbed the grade 2 one and brought it down. But they are linked to all the major outcomes, and they all contain a pre-assessment. If a student isn't quite where they should be and I need an activity to tool them up and bring them up to speed, there's generally several, like I'm talking anywhere from 5 to 12 different ones. You wouldn't do them all. You pick the one that is most related to the issue that you're seeing. And then there's a post-assessment in there. And if you're working with a small group and you need something for the other students to work on, they have a high flyer assessment piece that they can be working on as well that's related to it, so that everybody's doing something as you're working with smaller groups. If you need some ideas about coins, just want to play bingo with them. There's bingo cards in there. There's 25 unique cards. They're already done. I'll just print them off. And you just play bingo. Now we're going to learn about, under the M, I have a loonie, right? So put your marker on a loonie if you have one. And where is it? So straight line or whatever you decide. So all of these are interactive links. Not all of them would be needed right now. We'll revisit a lot of these. I'll revisit this one, so I'm not going to talk about it right now. This big book in here is a fantastic resource for you, but it's also copyrighted. Although you can download it from the internet, that's the link that I've given you. It's all posted on the internet. You have to have membership and access copyright, which gives you the rights to keep the book on your computer, in your computer, and save it to your desktop. You can't do that if you don't have this, but it doesn't mean you can't read it. It doesn't mean you can't grab a couple of sheets from it. You're not going to exceed 10% at any time when you just take a couple of worksheets. Just don't house it on your computer. Just link it, bookmark it, so that you can go back to it. These are some of the books that I'm finding right now, because I'm also unpacking science, but these ones work really well given the cycles that we're talking about, and they're all related to math. So they'll be in the slide deck. So again, if it's something that you want to order for your library, this will give you, but these are really good little books. I've been quite impressed with them, and they tie so well into the science at the same time. It's nice to have cross-curricular. If you have Origo books in your school, you might have it and not realize that Muddy Mess is a good one that you could bring out. This is one of the great big books, great for one of those carpet book talks. It talks about 2D and 3D shapes. So this would be timely for us to bring out a picture of 2D shapes. Just focus on 2D. Don't worry about 3D right off the bat. Okay. So if you have never used Cuisenaire rods, that would be something else that you could be looking at for addition, for patterning, for looking how I compose and decompose, because that's in our words, numbers. I have put some information into your folder already on this, but I am going to unpack this in November, because in November will be more timely for us to revisit these. This link here takes you to the Cuisenaire rods. If you've never seen them, just hang on till November. We'll do it then. But what I want to say is that this one takes you to the Cuisenaire rods that have no numbers on them. And that's where you should start. It's like money. Don't tell me everything about the money. Don't tell me everything about the Cuisenaire rods. Let me play first and figure out what it is before you actually launch me into numbers. So there's no rush to go here. Again, this is a free link that you can use at any time. So that gives you some information in there that will allow you to sort of find your way through what we're still focused on for September, October, November, and December, but we'll revisit a lot of it in December. I wanted